Hello and welcome to a new episode of the show. I'm your host Reda, and I'm very excited to present my guest for the day. Her name is Lilian Banin. Lilian has a master's degree in psychology from University of Harvard. She is a Pilates instructor here in Dubai, and she is a specialist in rehab and injuries for the special population. Today, she's going to be discussing with us about her master thesis that talks about the effect of storytelling on performance when it comes to children. Meaning, in other words, like how does storytelling affects the behavior and performance of children? It's going to be a very interesting topic. It's like a new topic out there in the market that I myself have heard for the first time, and I'm very pleasant that I had the chance to speak to Lilian about it and for her to present the study for us. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Please leave your questions in the comment below. I will answer anything that you guys comment on, and I'll do my best to always help you. Thank you very much and enjoy the
Yeah.
morning, Lilian. Thank you so much for accepting the invite for today and coming to for the show. So for those who don't know you, can you please just introduce us and tell us who Lilian is?
I think the best way to introduce myself, my name is Lilian, and I'm most known as a Pilates instructor because I've been teaching many classes in Rio Pilates Dubai lately. But I'm also about to become a psychologist, graduate from Harvard Extension School, hopefully by May this year. And but I have an extensive background in the corporate world, so I've worked in several domains, like from banking, investments, to I had my own business in food and beverage, and I also worked in with the government through my husband's company in IT. Yeah, so my background is quite diverse, I would say. But
Lilian, you mentioned that you worked in the corporate world as well. So I'm actually wondering, why did you take the road of Pilates?
right, yeah, that's a very good question. Well, this is part of a career change where I found finally the opportunity, and I had finally the privilege of choosing where I'd like to invest my time, as I was wanting to invest my time in something I'm passionate about. And as I said, and I've been working since I was 16 years old. So I worked for over 20 years in the corporate sector, and that has given me a good amount of experience in building relationships with people within different contexts, different demographies, different cultures. And one thing that had always attracted me or interested me was observing how people behave in different ways and trying to be the most understanding possible, beginning to see things through different ways without judgment. So I was really interested in learning more about human behavior and how I could combine, my life experience, interacting with people, seeing people behaving and changing their behaviors over time, and with the academic learning, what else I could learn. And here I am towards the end of this journey. And yeah, so it's my passion. This is a career change. Pilates, where does Pilates fit in this combination of psychology and my previous experience? Well, Pilates is an amazing program, strengthening program that uses body and mind connection. So without noticing, when you do a session, a Pilates session, you're also, I would say, meditating. You're able to focus on your body, and that's something that we miss in ourselves, right? We are rarely mindful on ourselves, on how we breathe, on muscles engagement. We don't even know what muscles we have in our bodies. I'm just
Very
speaking
true.
generally. Okay. And when you do Pilates, you get to learn. You begin to learn more about your body. So then it becomes very it becomes kind of addictive. You don't just exercise your body or strengthen your body, which you actually feel, and that's more targeted with Pilates, but you also exercise your mind. You get to focus and learn what is inside your mind, and know the power that one has to connect the mind with the body. So you can just think of, say, if you think of a muscle that's not responding,
Mm-hmm.
just that you're thinking about that muscle and you contract, it will respond, it will contract.
Mm.
So that's the fascinating part of Pilates that actually drove me to becoming an instructor, becoming certified in injuries and special populations, and well, and more is to come in this field. Yeah.
Lilian, is Pilates could be like a form of strengthening, or is it like a form of treating injuries?
Right. That's a very good question. It's both, actually, Rita. Uh, so let me separate those two segments.
Mm-hmm.
So you have people who come for Pilates to feel stronger. So they want to feel stronger. And that's an excellent physical activity, Pilates, to achieve that goal. So there you would have people who does not have any injuries, because as in any other form or physical activity, if you have an injury and you are moving your body in a way which might be over activating a certain muscle that's causing or that's increasing that pain or that condition, it might be more harmful than helpful, that
Mm.
physical exercise, that physical activity or that particular movement. So what Pilates does is it creates repertoires or workouts that are targeted to help those people with health conditions to restore their flexibility, to restore their strengths, or to repair their postural imbalances,
Mm.
to fix that, And one thing that's really the focus of Pilates, that at least I focus a lot on most of my clients who come with injuries,
Mm-hmm.
is the lengthening of the spine. So
Mm.
I like to say, like, imagine the spine are those fingers here, right? It's made of vertebrae and they come on top of each other. So our lifestyle makes us acquire postures throughout the day that actually puts pressure over them, so they become tight. They don't have space, and the muscles are wrapping, like surrounding those vertebrae, they start to become tighter and tighter, to the point in which one day they either become hyperactive or,
Mm-hmm.
as I like to joke, useless. They have no use.
Mm.
And there is when injuries, that person or those people become more vulnerable to injuries. So Pilates is very, very beneficial to lengthening the spine. So there are many exercises that promote that, feeling tall,
Mm.
and the awareness of that feel tall position as well. So the more you do Pilates, the more you become aware of a posture and you stay lifted more than rounded and putting
Mm.
pressure over your vertebrae. not only the vertebrae, then you have your poor shoulders, the scapula, and then you have also your hips and down the knees. So they all suffer from possibly from that compression of your vertebrae and the muscles that become tight over
Very
time.
interesting. Lilian, you mentioned about the injuries and imbalances. I have a question that came to my mind right now. Do most people get born or grow up with a natural imbalance, or does it come through a sedentary lifestyle? Because every now and then I literally see everyone who has some kind of an imbalance. Either they grow with it or they just develop it.
Right. Yeah. So you, from my experience, right? Because I'm not a doctor, but from my experience, I can say there are cases which the person is just born with that. The person is more vulnerable to having a certain condition. So you have, for example, people who are born with hypermobility. So their body is just super flexible, super flexible. So there are three layers of muscles in our body. The first two layers are the ones that gives the joints a bit of more firmness and prepares the joints to have an efficient range of motion. So those people, for example, with hypermobility, they have that first layer uh, almost like almost useless. It's not working
Mm,
properly. It's not tensing properly. It's not bringing the joints and limiting the joints range of motion. So it just become super flexible. And so that's like a condition which mostly I've seen people are born with. They just develop as they grow. You can see when they're in their early childhood and then throughout school, the parents will be able to notice that more and perhaps even learn more if they take the kid to a doctor's visit. And scoliosis is also could be one that is the person is born. There are other conditions also that, like lordosis, when you have your lower back curve a bit too deep,
mhm,
or the upper back, which we call kyphosis, a bit too much, too overflexed.
mm,
Those could possibly be there in the kid since he or she was born. But most people who come to me, they come with conditions that develop over time
mm,
throughout their lives. And that's a very interesting thing I've been noticing. Uh, Lately, it's been starting with young adults. So
true.
I see young adults who have just entered university. So they are in that stage, like that age of 18, 19 years old, or even younger, with lower back pain
Mm,
or with neck pain. So those are things I would rarely hear about in my days, in
mm,
my days when I was that age. And nowadays it's much more common to see. And another thing which I find interesting, people above 35 years old or close to the 40s, they begin to show, like they come to me with their x-ray reports or MRI with disc bulges already. Disc bulges are discs, and then they could be either mostly in your cervical, in your
mhm,
neck vertebrae, or mostly in the lower back, in the last vertebrae of your spine. And so these are conditions certainly developed over time, like
mm.
because of their lifestyle. And why young children or young adults, my that's how I see. Why are they currently developing more injuries in their bodies, like musculoskeletal injuries? Is probably due to their increased use of the of the
Very
smartphone.
true.
Yeah, sitting over, like in front of a computer, playing games. And I have 3 like young adults now
Yeah.
there already. So that's what I've seen even with my own kids, that constant fight, the battle of us parents on trying to reduce that time that they want to have holding a smartphone or a tablet or just sitting and playing games. And they are not ready to be aware of their posture, even though the parents keep on telling them, fix your posture, lift your chest, fix your posture. It's not for them. Their minds are still under development. Their focus is just there in what they're doing. So that's why I feel nowadays we're beginning to see one of the, unfortunately, the negative outcomes of these technological advance.
Tools, yeah, like one of the many negative aspects, actually.
Right. And for the elder ones, like the older, I would say still mid-age or below 40s, I feel that on top, in addition to being, of course, to not appropriate lifestyles, it would also be due to the fact that they are perhaps doing exercises not in the wrong way, but they're just not aware that working out the way they're doing is just increasing the activity of a certain muscle or a certain group of muscles that is taking over the job of a major muscle in your body. So, for example, you have a movement which we all have, which is hip extension. So, it's when you actually pull your leg straight backwards. So, in that movement, how is it supposed to be? Our glutes, the main glutes, should be the first muscle to fire. And that's a comment coming through the brain. Okay. And then after the glutes, you have the hamstrings, and then you have the lower back, we call lower back muscles to simplify. And then the upper back muscles, along with your abdominal muscles. Now, what I see most people, especially in this age of 35, below 40, and after 40s, you see the firing happening most, I think it's 99.9999% of cases, the hamstrings are the first to fire. The glutes, I like to call them the lazy muscles. They're just chilling out, doing nothing. So the hamstrings are working on behalf of the hamstrings and the glutes itself also. And in many cases, that's the sad part of it, the lower back muscles are activated just to help us pull that leg straight backwards. They're activated before the glutes. So imagine such a big muscle. It's there to do that big job of pulling a leg, the whole leg. It's really heavy, pulling a leg backwards. And when you have your lower back muscles doing the job of a glute, then there is when, and you do that over and over again. So coming back to my point, doing a workout in which could be increasing the activation of these muscles. So maybe somebody is really feeling like I'm really healthy. I go to the gym every day, let's say, just to simplify, okay, gym. And then when he or she does hip extensions, he or she is not, they're not aware that their lower back muscles are activating every time he or she does that movement. So they keep on strengthening that firing sequence, which is actually going to harm them. You
I see.
understand?
Yes,
So
yes.
that's why I feel like Pilates is so important to educate, first of all. And once you know what is your firing sequence, you could just begin to focus more. So you activate your glutes, you just pull your glutes, let the glutes engage first. And there are studies that show after firing a certain muscle that was just lazy, as we say, or over 50,000 times? Just okay.
Just 50,000 times.
50,000?
Not a big number.
Not at all. But if you are like doing Pilates twice a week or 3 times a week, you get to achieve that 50,000 times within, let's say, a year or two. So say after a year or two, your brain would have learned finally that new firing sequence. And then you wouldn't need anymore to fire your or to activate your glute in that example yourself, like a conscious activation. It would just come like it would just be automated
By default.
by default.
Lilian, now after you introduced me to Pilates, we were talking about your thesis, which you did for your master's degree, which was
Right.
about the narrating and storytelling in Pilates. What can you please tell me about this so we can get into this topic? Because I was really interested. It's the first time that I hear about it.
Yes. Thank you. Yeah, that's been a very fun project. This is a capstone project from Harvard, and it's equivalent to a thesis. And I chose this topic. So the topic is Pilates Tales. So basically, it's a way in which I teach Pilates and positive psychology using storytelling. So to make it simple, and that's for children. Okay, that's for children from 9 to 13 years old. So to make it simple, it would be like starting a session with a short story. Okay, a short story adapted to that age group of children. And through the story, after this story, we would be having a short positive talk, as I call. And in each of the talks, I pull one we call the character strengths. So those are soft skills that people have, like having courage, having resilience, having creativity, being kind, those sorts of things. Those are strengths that a human being hopefully can build or have already. So I pull one. So let's say I will pull courage. And I link that topic to the story, and we establish a short conversation to help children see that strength in themselves. So during that short conversation, he or she, the kid, will be able to maybe understand that he or she is brave, and he practiced that in a certain occasion, and what is being brave. When do we do we need to be brave all the time? What kind of opportunities that we grab that make us feel like having courage? Are all opportunities deserved of being brave? Like maybe bullying a friend is not an opportunity that a kid would actually want to have, right? Or grab, or that wouldn't mean that he or she's being brave. So after that it's a very short talk. So the whole session is 1 hour or less. So we start with a short story. So it's like a storytelling with a book, and then this short talk of 5 minutes, 10 maximum, and then a workout. So the Pilates workout. So if the group of children, or if it's a one-on-one session, if they had any injuries or anything that required a more tailored repertoire, so that's going to be the repertoire that group or that kid will require for that session. And we end the session after the workout with a final talk on that, let's say the topic, which was courage. And so the idea behind it is to divert the focus on the imperfections of the children, or on the weaknesses of the children, which they know already. They're aware already of their weaknesses and their imperfections. So diverting the focus over those areas and focusing more on the strengths, on nurturing the strengths that are either there already, they're seeing that strength, or we would be just helping them to release that, unleash that strength through the session.
I
So
see.
as a result of that, you get kids like us, when you're seen for your strengths rather than your weaknesses, you put a smile in your face, right? And that triggers motivation. You become more motivated in whatever you're doing in that moment, and motivation leads to more engagement. So I have a kid who is like my daughter. She's very dear to me, and I've been doing these sessions with her for a while, the Pilates Tales session, and I can clearly see how the engagement increases after I put her into this structure, into this framework of a Pilates Tales session, and the focus becomes only on that, on her strengths throughout the session, and in the end, she was there, or the person would be there to fix something. That's why people do Pilates, right? But we did not talk about that. And in the end of the session, you managed to fix that thing because you actually did the exercises, right? But without having that focus, that highlight on the imperfections. Yeah.
Speaking of imperfections, Lilian, like, what do you think puts the pressure on the kids of showing their imperfections? Because as kids, like, their job is just to have fun and never, let's say, get indulged in the negativity of the world. So what do you think plays a role in showing these negativities to them in a sense of the community, let's say?
Yeah, I think we live in a society that unintentionally highlights in people's imperfections. When I used to be a leader, I myself had to learn how to, if I had to speak to any of my team members, and like most of the times when we want to have a conversation with somebody is to try to fix something, right? It's very unlike that we are coming just to praise. So that's something I had to work on myself when I was a leader, to always begin a conversation trying to pull a strength, try to pull a positive thing in that situation or in that person itself. So if we adults, we are conditioned to behave in that way, to see imperfections before the strengths or the positives. How about the kids? The kids, they're just a reflection of who we are. and and with kids, one very interesting thing, which is part of my research. So there is a theory about that talks about children's abilities concepts, the development of children's abilities concept. And so you must have noticed, like usually parents and educators, they use those very simple expressions like good boy, good girl, good boy, good girl, when you want to praise a kid, right? Or when you want to praise. And in fact, that's how children perceive their own actions. They're not as like their understanding or their processing is not as complex as adults. It's much simpler. So they either see what they do or who they are as being bad or good. Like you said, they're so simple. Now, why is there so much negativity? So when a kid like shares a toy with a friend, he or she knows he's being a good person. Okay, so And when a kid gets a low mark in his math exam, let's say, the kid is not attributing that low grade to his abilities or to his intelligence level. It's too complicated for him to do that. You know? He's just summarizing that into a bad conduct, a bad behavior. So that's how simple they are. However, as they grow older, because kids are still developing, you know, their brain is still constant development until they reach the age, if not mistaken, I think around 23 years old or 25, in this range. Yeah, they're still under development, their brains. So when they start moving from like the early childhood towards preschool and mid school, they begin to consider more the abilities, their own abilities and their own level of intelligence. So if, let's say, he took a bad mark in math, so earlier he would attribute that to a bad conduct, not to his lack of intelligence. But then as he grows older, he will begin to attribute that to maybe, and I'm not so good, like I'm not so intelligent, other kids are more intelligent than me. So then his words begin to become a bit more complex and more complicated. Poor them. Yes, begin to have our lives of much more complex understanding. So when the kids are when they have experiences when they're young, you know, like 5, 6, 7 years old, when they have experiences that constantly make them feel bad, like when they make them feel like they're bad boys, bad girls, those experiences, as per studies, tend to influence how they evaluate their abilities and their intelligence later on when they reach the mid school.
Very interesting.
Yeah. And so those expressions that were like initially seen as so superficial, like not really important, they mean a lot for children. And that's one of the reasons why because in my work people come with injuries. And I could see, and although I don't teach children, I have only like a very, very close friend of mine whom I do that on in my personal time. And so most people, although they were adults, I would see them coming with their injuries. And the fact that they knew that they were not like fitting the society with their body condition, that would disturb them. But like the focus would be just on trying to fix that thing, you know. How about the rest? I mean, are you as a person seen as just for the injury that you have? Right? And definitely that's not something that's motivating. When you look at a wound that you just fell down, you keep looking at your wound with the bleeding, right?
Yeah.
It's not gonna make you feel good, right? So
Like if you're focusing only on the negative aspect of, let's say, yourself.
Exactly. So when I started seeing that more often in my work, and then I thought, and I was aware already. I had studied positive psychology and as a science during my degree, and I was aware that positive psychology was being extensively used across schools and successfully used. So Martin Seligman, who is considered the father of positive psychology, he had this vision that children should learn happiness, should learn how to see their strengths so that they could live happier lives and achieve well-being. So I was aware of the science already, and then I thought, why not to use a bit more of this approach in healthcare as well? So that's how I thought of using this topic as part of my capstone, because then I would be having the opportunity to dig further and to understand whether healthcare has already explored positive psychology as an approach during interactions between doctors and patients.
Mm-hmm.
And I found out that no, it hasn't yet. That's something that is currently being investigated, but
Mm-hmm.
positive psychology as an approach, it hasn't yet been used within this healthcare context. So me, as a very very small representation of the healthcare sector, like as in
Mm-hmm.
Pilates, helping people with injuries through Pilates. Uh, I also, through my research, I found that it's not there. We don't have positive psychology related to Pilates or used during a session, and as well as in physiotherapy, because Pilates follows a lot of the movements that physiotherapists actually use in their sessions. So I thought maybe I could, through this capstone, I could just focus on these two professionals, Pilates instructors who are certified in injuries, as well as physiotherapists who are trained in
Mm-hmm.
Pilates, and maybe help them learn a bit more about positive psychology and how they could use their sessions to teach a bit of this positivity throughout their sessions using storytelling. So that's the
Mm.
third pillar of the project.
Lilian, how did positive psychology, let's say, change from the past to now? Like, what differences did it do, or what results did it show?
Yeah, so there are many studies and many. If I can recall, I think it's around 4,000 studies in
Oh.
positive psychology, like published articles
Mm-hmm.
on positive psychology since the year 2000. So Martin Seligman published his first article in the year 2000, and that was like when it was a revolution,
Mm-hmm.
and it's called a movement of positivity. And so they've been using his framework. So Martin Seligman devised a framework called PERMA-H,
Mm-hmm.
as in PERMA-H. So PERMA-H stands for the elements that come under positive psychology. So where Martin Seligman believed that we should focus in an intervention of positive psychology in schools or in other places, in health as well. So PERMA stands for positive emotions, engagement, positive relationships. Uh, well, I would have to check here.
Yeah, sure, no problem.
You can cut the.
No, it's fine. It's fine. I can cut it. It's okay. Don't worry.
Hold on. Just came out of my. Yes. Okay. Can I come back?
Yeah, let's go. Come back now. 3, 2, 1. Let's go.
Yeah. Okay. So Seligman devised this PERMA-H model, which would teach well-being and happiness to the world, right? Especially children. And through these 6 essential elements. So PERMA stands for positive emotion, engagement,
Mm-hmm.
positive relationship, meaning and accomplishment, and positive health as for the H.
Mm-hmm.
So these elements are the essence of his approach. So a school would decide to introduce or to intervene in their day-to-day in their children's day-to-day learning activities, and incorporate PERMA, his model, like Martin Seligman's model, in their curriculum. So there are many resources available for schools. Like the model itself is a very comprehensive model that has been evolving year on year. It has been criticized a lot in the beginning as well, as for in the lack of practical resources for teachers to teach positive psychology within their curriculum. But that's something that got evolved and is still under development until now. And so the approach was being more and more and more like adopted by schools all over the world, and it became like the new thing, the new thing in school. And in terms of the outcomes, now coming back to your question, so because of this rich literature that we have, so we are able to look into programs that were implemented and measured in terms of outcomes. Usually positive psychology is measured through either well-being outcome or happiness, so level of well-being and level of happiness. And most literature reviews that I have researched, so literature review is like a compound of many studies that fit some sort of criteria to be considered as part of that approved study for that literature review. So when you look into a literature review study, you're actually looking at so many other studies. So it's like a summary. So I looked into two of these huge summaries that are recently published, and they all showed increase in well-being as an outcome. So the kids, they seem to have improved their well-being, and they also improved in terms of positive relationships with their teachers, eliciting positive emotions. So they began to express more their positive emotions. And then it goes in line with your question, why is there so much negativity? So one of the outcomes is what we actually strive to have for kids, is to have a bit of more positivity in the way they behave, in the way they feel, and in the learning as well. So learning as in engagement. So if a kid feels more motivated and more engaged in class, so naturally chances are that he's going to learn more efficiently, like that class more efficiently.
I see.
Yeah.
Lilian, there's something that crossed my mind right now. Like, I understand how important being positive for a child is, and let's say showing the strength for them in order for them to enhance themselves better and better. But how can we address the weaknesses in a way where it doesn't harm them and we still are able to improve it efficiently? Like where they don't, let's say, focus on the negativity in a sense.
But be aware of the weakness. Yes. So yeah, this is actually part of the positive psychology science. So it's not that we overlook the what needs to be repaired or what needs to be improved. It's just that the focus goes more onto the strengths. But I get what you're saying. I think it's also that's out of positive psychology. I feel like it's important that children and adults, they're aware of their weaknesses and that they try to become better persons in life. We just need to be careful with the balance, right? So with not putting too much focus on how you feel about yourself in terms of the areas that you could be improving, and not putting also too much focus on the areas you feel strong about, right? So I think the ideal would always be to try to find a balance.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's how I feel.
I see. Lilian, are you currently, let's say, planning to make like a course, or like how can people get to know more about the
Mm,
storytelling of Pilates?
right. Yeah. So I my capstone is actually an online training program for Pilates instructors and physiotherapists. So I felt like doing something that could help those professionals, like including me, if I did not have this expertise, uh, just help them learn those skills and eventually learn how to embed positive psychology in their sessions using storytellings. And I thought of developing this course online and publishing that on Udemy initially because of the accessibility that it would provide. So it would be like not only in terms of reach of the course itself to as many people would find it interesting to learn, but also in terms of convenience for those interested in gaining those kind of skills, finding that flexibility, that convenience to do the course whenever he or she would like to do. And kind of, the course will be more like, it's not like a degree or any academic
Yeah.
course, right? It's just an idea of how you could get your kids in your sessions, you as a physiotherapist or you as a Pilates trainer, how you could get your kids more motivated in your sessions, more engaged, and in the end of the session, learning a new skill in positive psychology, which I find, especially for parents, like if there was something as such in my days when my kids were younger, I would feel really good about having my kids having a Pilates session that could also teach them how to become more resilient or how to become more brave. So it's all in one session, you know. Yeah,
Like
so
focusing on the hard skills and the soft skills, let's say.
exactly. Yes, Rita. So both of them, correct. And fix their body without
That's the most important.
fixing the
Yeah.
posture and all anything.
Lilian, is
Yeah.
there anything that you would like to add for the audience about the topic of storytelling?
Yeah, I think one area is the storytelling piece itself, right? So I had to research on that as well to back my capstone, as to why I'm using storytelling. So storytelling, what I learned is that well, everybody loves the stories, right? And
Yeah.
the further I dug into this field, the more fascinating it became to me. So it's been there for years and years. In fact, our Asians, they used storytelling to transfer their knowledge. So imagine there was nothing as like papers or pens or to write notes or anything. So how people learned stuff about life. So you had the elder of the tribe or of the
A group.
community, then the group, and those people would just share their knowledge through stories, telling stories. And why is it so engaging? So one of the benefits of storytelling is the engagement it provides, the emotions. So you can clearly feel that when you watch a movie, for example, right? So eliciting emotions. So there are areas in your brain that are activated whenever your brain is put into this situation in which you need to imagine things happening and understand how it feels for those characters to be
Mm-hmm.
performing and living that situation. So it begins to activate those areas of your brain that makes you feel emotion about that, and
Mm.
actually live that emotion in literally. Sometimes, like, I'm one of the persons like who cries a lot when I watch drama movies. So I think
Aren't we all?
yes. Or we laugh, right? So
Yeah.
we leave those emotions with the stories that we hear, or a friend telling you a story. You could either laugh or smile, or sometimes even cry with him. So storytelling has this power of creating emotions, allowing you to convey your emotions. And I think what's the most interesting piece of storytelling is the ability that it has to improve your memory. So it's proven
Mm.
in science that when you learn something through a story, you're much more likely to remember that thing. So when the learning comes into within a context of a story with the emotions linked to that, you're much more likely to remember that whatever was part of that story.
Mm.
Yeah. So it's been used from long time in schools. It's like widely used.
Like I was reading the other day, there's this guy, I don't remember his name. He's like the memory guru. He
Mm.
was saying that one method where it helps him in remembering things is creating a story about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, like especially, for example, making a scene in his mind where he starts feeling also about the story. So, like each feeling, each line of the story make him remember something.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
exactly. If you research further on this benefit of storytelling, which is the memory side, and you explore that, you get like tremendous outcomes through the use of storytelling. Yes, and I can see that, and it's so simple. Like, the resources required to tell a story are minimum. You only
Yeah.
need a teller, a listener, and a story. And the story can be anything. So, like in one of my stories, I created, well, it's a very well known story called The Gruffalo. To me, it
Uh-huh.
wasn't, because I had to learn that, but it's such a cute story. And then in the piece in which I create the positive talk, and which I try to link the story to Pilates. So there
Mm-hmm.
is one of the parts of the story that talks about the owl and the mouse. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so and the mouse is really smart, and the owl is trying to uh, have the mouse as a meal,
Mm-hmm.
and the mouse gets to outsmart the owl um, by, like, his talk. He has
Yeah.
a specific
But
approach,
his
and
wits.
yeah, he wins that. And then the owl, in the end, she goes back to her log house. Okay, and then I said to the kid, I said, so now, do you think that the owl uh, needs to do needs to strengthen her body to be strong, to be able to hunt and to have her meals? Then the kid will say yes. And
Mm.
this, that she could possibly have a reformer machine, like, which is a Pilates reformer machine, a mini reformer machine inside her log house. And then the kid, it starts to use her imagination. And even I could clearly see the reformer machine inside the trunk. And then even to me, I didn't forget that moment. So I can imagine the kid, and then you take it from there. So stories are fantastic. Yes,
Beautiful,
amazing.
actually. Like it's a very interesting area of study because, like, I don't think that people usually give a huge weight for storytelling. Like for them, it's just like a fun way of going to bed or connecting with the kids. but none have, let's say, used it as a tool for learning, which is
Right.
fascinating.
Possibly, I think maybe not as mindfully as it could be, right? Like you mentioned, parents reading stories, and I find it so beautiful and so important for children to have that moment, because in the end of the day, it's the moment that the kid is having with his father or mother, there, or his loved one. And if the parents could understand better the power of that moment, of that
Yeah.
storytelling, and make that moment a more mindful, like really take advantage of that moment, I think, yeah, I think the impact would be much greater in terms of development for that kid.
Beautiful. Lilian, on this very beautiful note, I want to thank you very much for coming in today. It's been a huge honor for you to accept the invite and speak about your expertise. And I wish you nothing but happiness for you, your family, your students. And I wish to see you maybe in the future for another episode.
Thank you so much. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share a bit of my experience here and excitement about my Pilates tales.
You are most welcome.
Yes, thank you very much,
Thank
Rita.
you so much,
I'll
Lilian, and take care.
take care.
Bye bye.
Bye.